Hey everybody, let's improve your writing skills quickly today while helping you make some money on the side. It's a great hack that a lot of writers miss and a great opportunity that will actually help you improve your writing skills while potentially making some money. And that's writing short stories. And short stories are not the most common thing when it comes to novelists, and it's something that a lot of novelists are missing. One of my favorite quotes by Walter Kern kind of describes this reality of what a short story can actually do for you. He said, "A short story or short stories are fiction R&D, and failed or less than conclusive experiments are not just to be expected, but to be hoped for." So, short stories really are R&D for authors, and are something that we can use to develop techniques and skills quickly. On top of that, there is a massive market for short stories. And it's something you can do today to actually, like I said, improve your writing and make some money through contests or anthologies or journals as well. On top of that, you get to test out new skills and practice new things that you wouldn't be able to pull off in a novel. But you have to start somewhere. I remember my first short story was absolutely terrible. It is some of the worst writing I've written since probably junior high. And I'm surprisingly proud of it. It wasn't great, but I found the glaring problems my writing had and was able to fix them quickly because of that short story. But how do we fit this into our writing schedule? How do we deal with this on top of every single other thing an author and a writer has to do today? Right? Social media, editing, querying, all of that fun stuff, writers groups, and just normal life. The reality is, short stories don't take long to write. Ray Bradbury had a fun quote that I like that is a little bit of a joke, but also a reality. He said, "Write a short story every week. It's not possible to write 52 bad short stories in a row." And I don't know if I'd go as far as say every week, but I found that writing a short story every quarter lets me A, get through ideas that I've been wanting to write but did not have fit into a novel. B, it lets me experiment with different writing skills and techniques. And C, it gets the bad stuff out of the way sometimes. I really have written several very bad short stories that will never see the light of day. Then I have others. You can actually see a couple of the awards up in the corner that have won awards and have paid money. And it's a spectacular feeling to be recognized for your writing, especially when it's something you didn't think you were good at. I'm not a horror writer, but my horror story was a published finalist. Another story was a very experimental sci-fi story that I wasn't sure was good, but because it did so well in one of the contests, it actually inspired a novel that I'm currently querying. And it received a lot of praise and a lot of accolades, as well as boosting my career drastically. But what does that mean for us as an author? For me personally, I've talked a little bit about my writing experience on this channel, but not a lot. In 2018 to 2020, I got back into writing heavily. I'd written off and on here and there quite a bit throughout my life, pretty much nonstop. There are a few points where I would lapse for a couple years here or there, but I was often writing something. But in 2018, I actually received a diagnosis that wasn't great and could potentially kill me if the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on with it. So I decided I wanted to put something out into the world and pushed. Well, my first novel came out in 2020. It was something super exciting, and I was so thrilled to have accomplished my goal. Even when the rest of my life was not going the way I wanted it to, that part of my life was. Until my publishing date was April 2020. And all of you guys know what happened just 3 weeks before that. So the publishing industry fell apart. My publisher held on for 2-3 months before they had to shut doors. It was a pretty small press. They were spectacular, so I don't like calling them out here at all, but started to struggle with my confidence. And because book sales were terrible, like pretty much everyone else's was, unless you were a massively big star or you found the social media secrets long before everyone else, I started to wonder if my writing was actually good and worthwhile. So I started trying to figure out what was going on. And in the Dragonsteel, very first Dragonsteel convention, which was 2021, I believe, I was at a small writers panel where they were talking about different experiences and things like that they had. And one of the authors, I believe it was Dan Wells. It might have been Brandon Sanderson, though. I forgot to write who said this. They said that writing a short story helps not only improve your writing skill, but your writing confidence. I suspect it was Brandon, because Brandon then went on to tell the story that he had about how he was struggling with something very similar, with his confidence and his skill. And he was starting to wonder if his desire to write professionally was a waste of time. And he had submitted a few stories to Writers of the Future. And when he received an honorable mention, it was the first real acknowledgement of his writing skill. For me, it was actually pretty similar. I was literally on the verge of being done, putting it aside, putting it on the shelf, and calling it quits, and just going back to writing for myself because I wanted to. And I received an honorable mention as well. And it was the first time in my life where I was actually recognized as an author. And all of a sudden, the fact that my story was good enough to get recognized out of several thousand stories was earth-shattering. It really did change my life drastically. And this really can do this as well. For your confidence can grow a lot with short stories. They're quick and easy ways to grow your confidence, experiment with stories. There will always still be the normal grind with these stories. And sharing them in contests, if you don't put it in the right contest or you don't submit it to the right magazine, it doesn't always work. But if you do it, it will give you that confidence far faster than novels ever will. Which is why it's so heavily recommended. There's a lot of very, very famous authors that have written short stories in the past or still write stories to this day. So now that we know we need to write short stories, what do we look for in a short story? Neil Gaiman actually gives a really cool quote when he's talking about short stories and what he looks for in short stories. He says, a short story is an ultimate close-up magic trick. A couple thousand words to take you around the universe or break your heart. And that's really what a short story is. A short story is a story in anywhere from a couple hundred words to most contests have a record between 5 to 7, or a rule between 5 to 7,000 words. But they can get upward to 15, 16, 17,000 words, depending on the contest or the anthology. And they really do encapsulate that. They take you around the world. They give you an experience that you've never had in a quick snippet fashion. You don't get a deep dive of the characters like you do in a novel, but you'll still find that you love them. And a lot of times you really will become emotionally bound to them. Some of the best short fiction I've actually read in the last couple of years has been that way. There's one that I can't actually remember the name of the story, but you don't actually get to even know the character's name. But you quickly become emotionally attached to them as they learn and grow. But what does that mean for your focus? Where should you focus as a writer when you're writing short stories? The reality is, all of those ideas that you have written down somewhere, whether it's a Google Doc or a journal or anything like that, those are the stories you can use. A lot of those aren't good enough to be a novel, or they may be some offshoot story that could be good, but you're not sure you can write it well, or anything that has a skill like that is something that will help you grow as a writer. It could even be something that you're not sure you're skilled in, or something you want to learn. With all that said, where should you start? I would start with that list, like I said. Go and find 2 or 3 different story ideas that you have that you don't think you could write in the current universe you're writing your novel in, or that you would feel comfortable writing an entire novel on. Typically, the best stuff to do is speculative fiction, so science fiction, fantasy, with a question. But you can do whatever you want. Like I said, some of my best stuff, I've written horror. It's actually a horror romance combination called Undead Friend Zone, about a guy who gets out of the friend zone because of a zombie apocalypse. That is not in my wheelhouse at all. But it's something that I wanted to write because of some of the things that had happened to me during the wonderful early 2020s. But that's where you should start. Start with your list of stories, pick a few, and test them out. Write the first paragraph or page of that story and see which ones you like. You may find more than one. That is okay. Find the one you like the best and just keep going. And at first, don't constrain yourself to a word count. That's not the way to get that practice. You can constrain yourself to a word count if you're trying to write for a contest. I do recommend that. The one I typically recommend starting with is Writers of the Future. It's free and it's big. So you can trust that your story and its rights are protected by doing this as well. So write the first page of it, the first of your 3 topics you want to write on. Pick the best one. The best one does not mean the one that is the most fleshed out or grammatically correct or clean. The best one is the one that inspires you to write more. Once you have that, run with it. Set yourself an initial goal of, say, 5,000 words. 5,000 to 7,000 words is a good length for a short story that's easily marketable. Once you have that, give yourself a very simple outline. Don't worry about the 3-act step. Typically, it's a 2-act at 5,000 words, 2, maybe 3, and go with it. Write that story. Don't worry about editing structure as you go. Write the story that you want to write and get it out. The next best part about short fiction is it's really easy to edit. It takes maybe 1, maybe 2, sometimes 3 passes if you're trying to refine it for something like a contest or an anthology. But do that and get it over with. Once that's nice and clean, you have something great that you can work with. Typically, this entire process will take, for me, about a week, maybe 2. If lights is really crazy, it can take up to a month, but that's with me writing for an hour or two a week on a short story. That's typically when I'm in a large editing process for my novel or life is crazy. Those happen. That's the other nice part with short fiction is because they're short and they're fast, you can stick them in their free time because you want to. Now, what do you do when you have the story? Oh, actually, I forgot something important. Once you've done this test, one of your first pass throughs needs to be a focus on emotion. Um, F. Scott Fitzgerald actually gave a pretty good quote on this that I really like. I know I'm using a lot of quotes this time that's not typical for a lot of my videos, but a lot of these have stuck with me for quite a while and have put a big impression on me this last year as I've been focusing on short fiction along with my novels. He said, find the key emotion. This may be all you need to find your short story. So, find the key emotion for this story. There will be one emotion that sticks out like a neon sign. Whether it's happiness, love, despair, anxiety, mistrust, whatever that key emotion is, find it, figure out how to milk it. You want that emotion to hit hard and hit fast. It can build, it can grow. It doesn't have to be a slap in the face of the first paragraph in. But once you've got that, get it ready and get it clean, and that story will strike very hard. Now, once you have that, there are several different things you can do. The big one I recommend is submitting to contests, especially in the beginning. And if you're wanting to grow your confidence, submitting to these contests is a great way to do it. You will find out very quickly where you stand as a writer. Now, to be clear, you will not get an honorable mention every time. You will not get recognized every time. That is okay. For example, with Writers of the Future, if it is a good story, you will know it's a good story. They have different types of responses for stories that didn't meet their criteria or were not good stories versus stories that were good versus stories that get honorable mentions, which typically is the top 10% of the stories that are entered. Then there's the silver honorable mentions above that. And then your semifinalists, finalists, and so on. So with that field, you will learn very quickly where your story sits. Your first several probably won't hit. That is okay. Going through the motions and getting started is the push. And remember, your story may not be a good fit for the contest, but it still may be a good story. I have a few of those too that weren't good fits for the contests I threw them in, but one of them, the horror story I told you about, was not actually a good fit for Rise of the Future. Did not make the brackets, but I turned around and sold it, or actually put it in a separate contest, and it was a published finalist. So that is the first place to start. Just get a story out. Get 2 or 3 out. The nice part with Writers of the Future, there are 4 rounds a year. So every single quarter you can enter a different story in and test these stories out. Once you do this a few times and you're comfortable with short stories, then it's time to start looking into writing specific subjects or for specific contests. A good way to do this is look for anthology calls. Social media has these a lot. There's also a tool called Submission Grinder that allows you to look up any of these anthologies and magazines. Sometimes they'll put out a specific call. Sometimes they'll put out a specific theme or loose theme that they're going with. For example, one of the ones I'm working with right now is a mercenary for hire. is the theme. And I'm writing actually a satirical story for that one. But once you dive into these, you'll find a little bit more niche and different places where you can publish easier, and you'll start to make money regularly. The best part with short stories is most of the time when you sell a short story, the publisher or anthology that you sell it to maintains the rights to publish for 6 months, and then they revert to you. You then have the right to reprint it to another anthology, another journal, and sell it again. Which means short stories make recurring money. The more short stories you have, the more short stories that are selling, the more recurring money you have as well. And down the road, you'll probably not be able to sell it after it's been printed 2, 3, 4 times. That's okay. Store them up. Once you have enough, print an anthology. Then sell it on Amazon with the rest of your books. It's a great way to get your stories out and get them shared after they've stopped making you money on journals. And now podcasts have become pretty common as well to buy short stories. I've sold one there as well. So there is a good way to make pretty decent side money as an author with short stories. And the publicity is huge. Your name appears in a lot of more places than it did before. And you're put in really cool environments where you get to meet new people. Writers of the Future actually flew me out to the gala last April. And I was able to meet several very famous, very successful authors and have them actually take me under my wing and learn from them. This isn't super common, but it does put you in places like this. I've had other anthologies where my name appears next to some fairly famous authors. I've got other stories that have done really well or have introduced me to other authors that we now are pretty close friends on social media and talk back and forth, share ideas. I also found a writers group through some involvement that way. So it does a lot more than just make you money and hone your writing skills. It also helps you grow as an author across the board. So with all this said and done, short stories are magic. You can quickly hone a skill and make your writing better while also making money on the side and getting a world of other benefits as well. So if you've liked all this information I've given you, don't forget to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. We've got a lot more coming and a lot of really cool stuff in the future. And if you've got any short story ideas you're working on, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Or if you have any questions, I am here to help. I believe that authors should be helping other authors get better and be more successful.